Hi, in this lecture we are going to define a timer for our image slideshow so that our slideshow will automatically switch between the images in defined time intervals. And we will also have to be able to change between the images manually. The first thing we need to do for this purpose is to define an object from the handler class. I name my object handler. I also create an object from the runnable class. I name it runnable. And I create an object from the timer class by the name of timer. Inside the onCreate method, I instantiate my objects. Handler equals new handler. And runnable equals new runnable. You see that the run method was automatically added to our class. And timer equals new timer. Next, I schedule my timer using timer.schedule. Inside the parentheses, a timer task argument is required. I type new timer task. You see that a run method was automatically added to our class. The next argument is delay, for which I enter 4000. And for the period of my timer, I enter 4000 as well. Our second argument shows that it takes 4000 milliseconds before the task is executed. And the third argument shows that the code inside the run method will be executed once every 4000 milliseconds. As always, inside the run method, I type handler.post. This method requires a runnable object as argument. So I pass in my runnable object. So once every 4 seconds, the code inside our runnable's run method will be executed. The first thing I need to do inside my run method is to assign my viewpager's current item to an integer variable. I create a new integer variable. I name it I equals, for its value I type viewpager.getCurrentItem. This means that the index of my viewpager's current item will be copied to my integer variable I. Okay, let's print out the value of I to better illustrate the functionality of the getCurrentItem method. I run my project on the emulator. Once the app is successfully running on the emulator, you see that once every 4 seconds or 4000 milliseconds, the value of our I variable is printed out in the Android monitor section of Android Studio. This means that currently our first image is displayed in the image slideshow. Now let's select the second image in the image slideshow and see what happens. As you can see, the value of our integer variable I changed from 0 to 1, showing that currently our second image is displayed in the image slideshow. I go to the third image, and you see that this time number 2 is printed out. Note that every time we switch to a new image in the slideshow, the value of our integer variable I changes accordingly. I stop my emulator. Note that I can use the value of the I variable to set the current item in my view pager or my slideshow every time that my timer task is executed. I mean once every 4000 milliseconds. I remove the system.out statement and I type I++. Here we first get the index of the current item in our view pager and then increment it by 1 in the following statement. I type viewPager dot set current item. Inside the parentheses, I need to pass two arguments, one integer argument named item and a boolean argument named smooth scroll. For the integer argument, I enter I, and for the boolean argument, I enter true. So inside the run method, we first defined an integer variable I and set it to the index of the current slideshow image. On the next line, we incremented our I variable by 1. Then we used the value of I to set the current item in our view pager. Okay, now let's check out our project on the emulator. Alright, the app is running on the emulator. You see that we successfully created an image slideshow in which the images are automatically displayed one after the other from left to right. And this goes on until we reach the last image in our image slideshow. We easily defined a timer which executes the code inside our runnable once every 4000 milliseconds. We defined an integer variable I which stores the current item of our image slideshow. On the next line, we increased our integer variable by 1 and then used this variable to set the current item in our image slideshow. Now I want to write some code that enables my image slideshow to start displaying the images from the first one after the last image has been displayed. I stop the emulator. Inside the run method, I'm going to use a conditional statement after I initialize my I variable. If I equals, now the question is, how should I know the current image is the last one in the slideshow? As you know, inside the SlideShow adapter class, we created an array in which we placed our slideshow images. So if we get the length of our images array and decrement it by 1, we will have the index of our last item in the array. So I can use this for my if statement. But how should I access the images array in my SlideShow adapter class? Note that we have already defined an object from the SlideShow adapter class. So I type if equals adapter.images.length -1, which means if we have reached the last index in our image slideshow. So basically, if the last image in our slideshow is being displayed, then I set the I variable to 0 and I use it to set the first image as my current item in the slideshow. Else, otherwise, if we aren't currently on our last image in the slideshow, then I increment I by 1, which means I go to the next item, and I display it in the view pager. So if we run our project on the emulator, the slideshow will start displaying the images from left to right, switching between the images once every 4000 milliseconds or 4 seconds. And once all images have been displayed, the slideshow will start displaying from the first image. And this loop continues on and on. Okay, I start the emulator. Okay, the application is running successfully on the emulator. You see that the images in the slideshow are displayed from left to right, one by one. So I'm going to wait until my last image is shown. You see that once the last image in the slideshow is reached, the slideshow automatically switches to the first one, as we expected, and again starts displaying the images from left to right. Note that we are still able to switch between the images manually. So now we have a complete slideshow which switches between the images both automatically and manually. Now you can do the same for your slideshow and even change the timer variables. Now you can do the same for your slideshow and even change the time intervals for your timer. And that's it for this lecture, how to add a timer to a slideshow. In the next lecture, we will create a signed APK for our slideshow project.